Hello, this is Dr. Ford Brewer with PrevMed, heart attack, stroke, cancer, disability, dementia prevention. Tonight we're going to talk about mindful eating. I attended my first meeting of a group that's all about mindful eating. So maybe you may say this is not such a heavy topic tonight. At least it's not heavy in terms of research. Maybe heavy in terms of weight management. Pardon the pun. I don't mean it totally as a pun. My dad died probably about 2 decades earlier than he should have due to morbid obesity, and he's not alone. Wasn't alone. There are tons of people in our society that are dying earlier because of obesity problems. It is a major epidemic right now. So what is mindful eating? This is a book. I'm reading it and plan to do a deeper book review, but I'm just going to do, again, a light, quick topic on mindful diet. This one is, actually there are several books, believe it or not, out there on mindful eating or the mindful diet. This one is the best. I've looked at several of them. The author is Ruth Wolliver. Actually, my wife, Janice, Dr. Derrickson, our health coach at PrevMed, turned me on to that book and the whole concept of mindful eating. Now, believe it or not, our super academic folks at Harvard are into mindful eating as well. According to them, mindful eating can help you with weight management. I've mentioned it a couple of times. What is mindful eating? Well, let's go back, like all of these other terms, break them down. Mindfulness is a Buddhist term. It's a concept of being fully aware of what's going on around you and inside of you. I actually do a good bit of mindfulness. Most of us are aware of mindfulness as a stress management tool, not so much as a diet tool. But when you think about being aware, how often are you actually aware of your meal? What you're eating, the sensation, the taste, chewing slowly, keeping silent, thinking about what was included in that meal, the preparation of that meal, the preparation and growth and development of the ingredients. Actually, when you think about it, most of us really don't eat that mindfully. The Harvard group goes, these are the components of their description on trying mindful eating. They also talk about small bites. You remember, again, for baby boomers, our moms used to say, take 20 chews of each bite. Yeah, they're talking about taking a full 20 minutes for a normal meal, chewing slowly, chewing completely. And before your next bite, or before your next serving of something, or before going to the refrigerator for the snack, ask yourself, am I really hungry? Now, I'll tell, again, one of the reasons I say this is a lighter topic is I'm not going to dig so deeply into the research. I'm going to tell 2 quick stories. One about the formation of this mindful eating group. The other is my own story around food. First, the mindful eating group. This is an interesting story. This mindful eating group came out of a conflict resolution social circle. There were some social circles going on here in Nashville, the development mostly around conflict. One of the overweight men noticed that, you know what, I've got a conflict with food and staying at my desired weight. So they ended up with a group of overweight men talking about this and approaching it from a social circle perspective. Then one day, 2 young, thin women joined the group. And the men will say, you know what, we just didn't get it when these thin women joined and wanted to be involved with this group. And we didn't get it even further when they said, you know what, yeah, we may be thin, but we've got a messed up relationship with food. So if you fast forward, originally it was titled and labeled more of a weight loss group. After these women joined, they retitled it, they thought about it, and they called it a mindful eating group. Now, this is an interesting point. This mindful eating group currently uses 12-step methods. That's Alcoholics Anonymous, with meditation, clarity and discipline around who gets to speak and when, clarity and discipline around making a commitment on what you're going to do. Again, a bunch of things that have been proven very effective in an addictions group therapy type of environment. Now, are we saying that food is addictive? I'm not going to say one way or another. I do think, well, let's talk about this group certainly says that food is addictive. This is Food Addicts Anonymous. And they say, well, you may be an addict if you crave things like sugar, you can't control your intake and your relationship to food. Have you tried multiple different diets and failed on all of them? Well, I have actually tried several diets. Again, I'll talk to you about those in a few minutes. My diets have worked. Have you ever been bulimic? In other words, vomited or used laxatives or diuretics to decrease your weight after a food binge? No, I've never done that. But they also add exercise, and yeah, I exercise a lot. So those guys might actually call me a food addict. Not sure. Let's go to the mental health professionals. There's a thing called DSM-3, Diagnostics and Statistical Manual. The psychiatrists and mental health professionals have had so many arguments over what constitutes the diagnosis of mental health, different mental health diagnoses, that they've come up with a manual called the DSM. I don't know if they've completed 5. There's a lot of publication around changes from DSM-4 to 5. And this one is on changes from DSM-4 to 5 regarding substance use, addictive behavior. And I think it's interesting to look at the components that they have in here about addictive behavior. We're going to ignore what DSM-4 had and what DSM-5 has and things like that. Actually, DSM-5 started a trend of breaking down dependence versus addiction. But let's get into some of the issues and think about food in relation to it. Hazardous use? Well, yeah, food's killing a lot of people. Has and continues to kill even more and more. Social or interpersonal problems related to use of food? Yeah, well, for sure. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading. Oh, neglected major roles to use food. Well, I think in a lot of situations, yes, that's probably true. Legal problems associated with food, obviously not like narcotic addiction and some of those. Withdrawal from food, I think that's debatable. I think you get into more of the interesting ones down here. Tolerance to food, I think like tolerance and withdrawal are both debatable. You could clearly make a case one way or another. You could make a case for it, but then try to punch holes in it. Used larger amounts for longer. Well, yes, for sure. Repeated attempts to quit food or to quit eating so much, of course. That's a big deal. Much time spent using food. Physical or psychological problems related to food. Activities given up to using food and cravings. Well, again, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not going to weigh in other than to say, yeah, there's a lot of things that, and maybe the professionals have come up, the mental health professionals have come up with a statement about whether food addiction, about existence of food addiction. Here's my story. My father died. He was over 350 pounds and my height. I'm 150. So he was carrying way more than two of me on the same skeletal structure. He's not the only person in my family that's had problems with weight. I remember leaving, when I grew up as an adult, getting thin, going back, and during a holiday, and the entire holiday, food was all over the kitchen. It was all over the living room, cakes and cookies and desserts and snack foods, and it was like you graze all day. It was a conversation that was obviously meant to show caring, but again, resulted in significant issues. I got up to a weight of 190 pounds in college. I'm 40 pounds less now. If you put the 40 over the 150 and use the 150 as the denominator, that's almost a 30% change in weight. That is significant. I've gotten up to 175 at one time as an adult, but for the most part, I've remained at the lighter areas. Yeah, I've had a lot of rules. Some of them worked for me and some of them didn't. I've traveled a lot with my job, and I've said, I just cannot eat an entree when I'm at a restaurant traveling. If I start breaking that rule, I start porking up. Regarding overall diets, pre-2017, I was mostly plant-based. Although I'm still plant-based, I've made several changes. I've become carb intolerant, so I've had to cut way down on the carbs. As a result, I've relaxed a little bit on the plant-based component. I've also added some intermittent fasting and some mimicked fasting. At this point, I do have a little bit of trouble keeping my weight at 150. Sometimes with the diets that I'm using, it wants to drop below that. That's a great thing because before this year, I cannot remember a time in my life when I was not always hungry. That's a reference to the title of the book by David Ludwig. I've had plenty of failed rules. I knew that I should try to stop eating when I was full. Never was able to make that happen. So I thought, you know what, maybe I can take a partial step to get to that goal. I'm going to leave a little bit on my plate, even if it's just one bite. Couldn't make that happen either. I've had more than one friend point out to me that I eat fast. So I may be thin, and I've got some history around food. There was a movie that I saw once. I don't remember the name of it. I don't remember what it was about, but there was an evil man. He had two very thin, mean-looking Doberman pinschers. To demonstrate his discipline around these Doberman pinschers, he threw two steaks right in front of the dogs. The dogs didn't move until the man snapped his fingers, and then they pounced on the food and devoured the steaks within about 3 seconds. Unfortunately, too often that's the way I tend to approach a meal. So, just again, a quick share around diets. We'd spend a lot of time talking about macronutrients in diets and science. This sort of touched on science, but not that deeply. Again, the emotions are what drive eating behavior. Thank you.